Hey everyone, welcome to the second video in our Snowman series, second and final video that is, and I owe you a little bit of an apology because I kind of implied that I was going to leave you hanging on the last video. But in this video we're going to refine this guy a little bit more, and then I'm going to actually maybe add an extra button down below on his belly, and then we've totally forgot to add these tassels that are in the concept, so I'm going to add that now. And then I'm going to actually try to decrease the width of these lines in his head too, just to make him look a little more visually appealing. So let's start with the buttons. And first thing I think I'm going to do is come over to my sub tool, and we have combined this guy in the last video, and we have shelled him. And then at the very end of this video too, we'll scale him, decimate the geometry so it's not so high res, and then we'll get it ready for the printer. So I'm going to steal this button off of this guy, so I'm going to hit duplicate to make two snowmen, and then I'm going to come over here and hit Control Shift and switch over to my select lasso. And I'm just going to grab that button here. If I turn on solo mode, we notice we've gotten some of this guy in there, so we're going to just Control Shift and then hold Alt to change it to a red selection to an inverted selection, and then get rid of that. I'm going to come over to Geometry, Modify Topology, and then do Delete Hidden and Close Holes. So now I closed the back side of that when I did that. And then I'm going to run a Dynamesh real quick too, just to make sure that our topology is all around and maybe smooth them out just a little bit. So if I turn off solo mode, now I have a separate button that I can then do with as I please. And I'm going to scoot that down and get that guy into place. And then we kind of lost the button up here, and so I'm going to duplicate this guy by holding Control and clicking and dragging on that green arrow, and then scoot that back and kind of just imply that those buttons go all the way up. So if I hit Shift F, we can kind of get a better idea. Clear my mask by Control left clicking and dragging, and we have some buttons. So there's a little bit of wobbliness in it, so I'm going to try to fix that real quick. Switch over to my snake hook tool, kind of pull those things around. Might be kind of fun too if, you know, like this one is a little bit rotated, so I'm going to invert my selection, center my pivot on this guy, turn off symmetry, and then center my pivot. Maybe do a little bit of a rotation here, just kind of make it look asymmetrical and more fun. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is actually I need to make sure that I combine, and we don't need to redo the shelling process or anything on this. I think we're only going to be saving so much on resin by reshelling. So for now, let's start to add our tassels, and the way I'm going to do that is come over to my brushes. I'm going to grab the curve tube, and just make sure that you grab the curve tube and not the curve tube snap. I'm going to scale my diameter down to about this size, and then just drag one of these guys out. Okay, and so now we still have control over this. We can grab that top red circle and then move that back and into place. And I think I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna left click on anywhere on the geo to get rid of that rig, and then I'm going to switch over to my move tool and just hold control and use the white arrow to kind of move these guys into place. Okay. And we gotta scoot that back a little bit, and that's fine. Gonna clear my mask, move over to my move topological brush, and get these other ones, scale up my size, and then kind of get these other ones in place. And again, I love this brush because I can just scale up the size, and as long as I mouse over the topology of the object that I want to modify, it's gonna do just that. Okay, so I'm going to Control Shift left click on these guys and just hit Control W, make sure that they're in their own poly group, and then I'm going to mask them by Control left clicking and dragging a rectangle, and then I'm going to Control Shift left click tap to unhide everything, hit Shift F, and then Control left click to invert my selection and go to the Move tool, And I'm going to click this blue arrow while holding control and drag these guys back to this other one. And kind of move those guys into place. So now we've got our tassels. And while those are still masked, I'm going to just kind of move these guys around so it doesn't look like we just did what we did. And kind of just make them look unique and move those around a little. And those are looking good. One thing I think I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to run a subdivision on those first. So I'm going to Control Shift left click and tap. Come over here to split. I'm going to do a split hidden. So now that we've created a separate subtool, I can now hit Control D. And the reason I didn't do that on my other one is because it was already fairly high res. I didn't want to have to subdivide that. So now I'm going to do a merge and then merge down and click OK. And so now those are combined down. They're nice and smooth. We don't see that polygonal faceting. And we're ready to rock. So we've got our buttons, we've got our tassels, and now I'm going to try to fix these, the gap, the width of these weird things right here. And it might be a little bit tricky. I'm going to turn on my symmetry, make sure I hit X, and then holding control, I'm going to drag, I've snapped to the front view. So just remember, as you're rotating around, hold Shift and it'll snap to your view, and make sure that this guy's nose is facing towards you. With symmetry on, I'm going to just drag a rectangle along this line here, and then I'm going to blur that by Control left clicking on the mesh. Whoops. Let's do it right here in the mask itself. I have better results that way. And then this is just a test we're going to conduct here. So let's Control left click and tap to invert, go to scale, and then reset our pivot. And I'm going to unlock and then reset the orientation and then relock and grab this red square and sort of squash that in. I know it's looking crazy right now, but we'll just move it back into place. And then I think that might look a little bit better. So we'll do it again, maybe again. It wants to scale into the center pivot, and that's why it moves to the center. But I actually kind of like that it's creating this little weird thing, but we're going to subdue that just a little bit. And then smooth out the artifacting from the mask. So this is getting a little bit handsy, but I feel like those gaps are a little bit too thick. We're kind of losing some interesting aspects of this. So I turned off my symmetry to fix this tooth over here. Just fixing, refining. And then let's try to do that with these inner gaps too. So Control left click and drag a rectangle, and then blur, Control left click tap, and then invert, Control left click tap outside of your geometry, and then we accidentally grabbed the stem, so let's mask this guy. Might even come over here to the lasso and then mask that. So okay, so let's blur again and then reset our pivot, the transform gizmo, and grab the red square, and then we'll move it back. Okay, so I kind of like that a little bit better. We can even just run a smooth and subdue these a little bit, and that might help to kind of make them less prominent. Just running a smooth. I was really just looking over my concept art and just finding that I just wasn't as happy with my 3D version as I was with my concept, and so that's a typical occurrence for me. So we'll go back to the concept and see if there's anything. Hitting P on the keyboard to show our perspective, and then I'm gonna version up. I'm gonna hit Save Next, and so now we move to version 4. Alt tab over to my concept. He's a little more hunchy. His head like kind of juts forward a little bit more, and I do like that. His arms are maybe back a little bit more, and they're actually a little bit bigger too. So let's see if we can just kind of get these proportions more in line. So let's move things around a little. Add some bulbousness to some roundness. They're not a perfect square. Hope you're hearing my lovely little boys playing. And I'm gonna turn off dynamic on my brush so that I can get that brush size nice and big. and get a little crazy with the head shape now, and just kind of push that in. So I'm kind of creating this interesting little curve here. I might be pushing it a little bit too much. And I know I'm kind of like going against the Minecraft perfect cube look, but you know what? I'm okay with it because we're doing our own thing. We're stylizing. So might have gone too far, so it looks like you would tip over. So let's scale up our draw size and scoot that back, and maybe come down this way on the back side of his head. I'm listening to the Minecraft music right now too on Spotify by C418, and I love the music. It's super calming and it's really good for just inspiring music. That's the first thing I noticed when my kids were playing this goofy looking game with blocks and cubes and it just looked so terrible, is that the music was awesome. Okay, so now I think he's kind of looking a little more fun. He's looking more like our concept. If I Alt-tab back over to what we got, so it's looking closer. His legs are definitely more inflated, so we could try to get that too. Let's give that a go. So what I'm going to do is come down here and just hold the control. Oops, I'm on my lasso. Let's switch back to the mask pen. Hold the control and then just drag a mask around those guys. We might have to paint them just a little bit, just hand paint around those edges. And just kind of get those legs painted in our mask nicely. And then I'm going to invert my selection, control left click tap, and inflate. We'll try that. We'll try and inflate first and see what that does. So this is going to do multiple things. This is going to make our 3D print more sturdy, so it's going to hold up better because there's a lot of weight standing on those legs. So you'll notice we had some weird artifacting in the tops and bottoms, so I'm just scaling in Y with my transform gizmo and then just getting those into place. So hitting P on the keyboard, come over here to draw, it's switching to 24, and now this is what our character is looking like. So I'm much happier with this. So we've gone from, I'm gonna hit save real quick. I'm gonna load the old version so we can kind of compare against, so this is where we were in version 3. And then you can always switch back over to your new subtool in version 4. I think that's looking more appealing. I like this guy a lot more. The tassels help a lot too. So, okay, cool. So I'm really happy with this. So now what we're going to do is, if we look and hit Shift F, we have a lot of polygons in this character. And a way to know is you can mouse over right here, and it says up there poly count is 2.2.5 million or so. 2.2. And then 2.23 points, and it just gives you your points and your polys. So what we're going to do is run a decimation. And in order to secure the state of this guy, I want to save this guy's state. I'm just going to duplicate my subtool, and this is going to be my decimated. So I'm going to rename this to Snowman DC for decimated. And then we're going to come up here to Z plugin, decimation master. And you might be wondering what this is. I mean, it sounds like it's just going to like delete the world or something. But all it's going to do is drop our poly count down significantly, but retain all of the detailing that we've done. So the way you run this is you leave it at 20% of decimation. That's fine. We'll hit pre-process current. And this can take a little while. This can take up to 5 to 10 minutes. So I might pause the video and then skip ahead once that's done, and we'll continue from there. So I actually canceled that operation because I had an idea, and what I want to do is I want to run a hole that goes all the way up from the bottom into this, so I could run an LED light into his head and have that light up. So what I'm going to do, I mean, obviously we've shelled this character, but there's no way I could be able to get, you know, a light or a little LED to slide up through that. So what I'm going to do is append, actually, you know what? I think instead I'm going to draw a curved tube, and just in the Snowman decimated. So again, we haven't decimated yet. We're just going to delete this guy for now, and then we'll remake him when we're ready. I'm going to run a Dynamesh on over the entire character. Crank it up to about 1200 and run the Dynamesh, and just make sure that everything is just one continuous mesh here. This could take a while. And this is all scale dependent, so depending on what real world scale your model is, this number over here, this Dynamesh resolution number, is arbitrary or based on whatever your scale is. So now you can see that we have, you know, averaged polygons throughout the entire model, which is what we want. So now that I have the curved tube active, I'm going to run this up through the leg and then into the head like so, okay? And that's probably too big, so we got to scale in, and you can get some pretty tiny LEDs on Amazon, and maybe I'll do a video on the ones that I prefer, and to make that work. So we obviously don't want this, so we're gonna, now that we've drawn it, we're going to Control Shift left click tap on that guy, oops, on the vertice. Make sure you grab a point, and then come to Subtool and do a split hidden. Okay, so now we have two separate subtools. Let's make sure that Dynamesh is back and active, because sometimes that has a tendency to turn off the Dynamesh button when you run these operations. So I'm going to switch that down to 1064 resolution and then rerun the Dynamesh, because I think his poly count's a little bit high, and we don't want this operation to take forever. So okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to come down here and make sure, hitting P on my keyboard to go to orthographic view, make sure that that comes all the way down through the bottom, and then this one comes all the way up into his mouth area, and then we're going to move this over into place. And a fun way that you can see what's going on is you can come over here and click this Activate Edit Opacity with the Transparency button, so you can kind of see what's going on inside there. He's going to look really cool with his head lit up. So I'm excited about this. Okay, so there's not a lot of kinks. It's nice and smooth, so the LED will slide right up and in there. And then we need to make this a subtractive mesh. So what we're going to do is, first thing first, we're going to drop this to the bottom of the stack. It's very important that you do that. It's just kind of the way this whole operation works, is whatever's being subtracted needs to be on the bottom of the subtool that's getting subtracted from. So just a pro tip for you. Coming over to poly groups, and then make sure this is group as Dynamesh sub, and then making sure that you have checked this little button so that's over on the right hand side like so, and I believe that's it. So let's hit save, because this operation has a tendency, whoops, we have changed our subtool naming, so that is broken, so make sure you do a save as, and then let's version it up to version 6 for this. Big fan of versioning up. Okay, so now go to your top snowman and then merge down to your bottom subtool. So now these are combined, and then Control left click and drag a rectangle, and then just wait for the magic. And sometimes this can take a while. I mean, this we got into a few million polygons with that Dynamesh, so this can take, you know, a couple minutes maybe. It's all depending on your hardware specs. Okay, awesome. So now if we look at this, we have now created this hole that goes all the way through. And because we shelled it, it's still going to be a little bit tricky, honestly, to get this thing all the way through. But I think we're just going to finagle it. We're going to go for it. So this is good for now. I noticed that I didn't like this kind of curve right here at the bottom of the belly. I want the belly to kind of droop down, so I was going to fix that. Try to get all the way back there. I'm going to swing around to this side too, make sure that, okay, that one's good. Maybe on the side too. There we go. I think overall this guy's looking a little more appealing than he was before. I'm just going to continue, because you know me, I've got to just continue pushing the details. That's the fun part of this, man. I just love the sculpting cloth is fun. Remember to hold Alt to pop that Damien standard brush out. Get those details. Cool. All right, so now we can get the LED through there. Hopefully, we'll see. And then another thing I was thinking about too is we want a place to be able to hide the battery pack, and I don't know that this hole is going to be big enough. So let's run a mask. Control left click, drag a mask here, and then Control Alt left click to make sure that there's just a square on the inside. And then another thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to eyeball this, but we don't want to mask all this stuff up here, so we're going to hold a Control Alt mask right here and just try to get this bottom edge. And it looks like we've gotten lucky. So I'm going to invert my selection, Control left click tap, and then center my pivot and try to make this hole a little bit bigger. Might have to mask this a little bit closer to those edges so I have more control. And then I'm just going to do a mask blur real quick. And because it's so dense, it's going to take a while to calculate that, just fair warning. And then just scale this hole out. We might have hosed ourselves. Let's undo what we did last and make sure that that's scaled more out, because we're going to get more bang for our buck that way. And then I'll kind of close that in a little bit. This is getting handsy, but we're going to need somewhere we can hide that battery pack, and we don't want to have to like glue it onto the back of this guy or anything. We want it to be able to hide, and they're roughly about 1.5 inches in scale. So I think that's going to be good for now. Let's just run a re-Dynamesh just to be safe, make sure everything is just good and clean. And we can always, take a Dremel tool to this, like after the fact, and kind of clean this out and make it fit a little bit better after the fact. So, speaking of scale and knowing how big things are, let's bring in our scale cubes. And first things first, let's decimate our model. So we'll go back to Z plugin and then back to Decimation Master and hit pre-process and let that cook for a minute. Okay, so I've skipped ahead, and that actually ended up taking about 6 minutes, which is way too long. So next thing what I would probably do is, looking back, I would just make sure that this is Dynamesh at a much lower resolution and then rerun that. It'd be way quicker. But you'll notice that no change has been made to the mesh. It's still that same exact mesh. So now in order to get that to decimate, we just have to click Decimate Current, and this part of the process is usually substantially faster. And then it gets exponentially faster too as you decimate. So we might have to run another decimation after this just to get it to where we want. And I should probably mention as well that when you mouse over, we're now at 3.8 million, which is way too many polygons, I would say, before you send it to your slicing software. We like to get it to probably a maximum of 1.5 million polygons. I haven't really tested the limits of ChiduBox. But for me, I'd noticed that performance and everything is really good around 1 to 1.5 million polygons. So let's do a pre-process. And if you get tired of just running this operation, you can actually drop it down and you can say, let's do 10% of decimation instead, because we have to go quite a ways. So I'll just do 12.6 and then hit pre-process current and let that cook for a minute. So hopefully that should be around between 2 to 3 minutes. But I'll skip ahead. Okay, so the pre-process took about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Now we're going to come up here to decimate current and run that. Okay, and you'll notice that the poly count was significantly reduced. And one thing I forgot to mention is by the time you're starting to decimate, I really recommend making all of your modeling adjustments, like finalizing all of your modeling adjustments. You can still do like big broad adjustments like this. But if I wanted to go in and like change the pattern of these little bumps in here and stuff, your geometry is now decimated, so the poly count won't support much workflow in that regard. So just be aware of that. Like when you get to decimating, you're final. You're ready to go to the printer. So, okay, so I think that's probably good. Let's check our poly count over here. We're at 500,000, so we're well within reason of sending this off to print. And now what I want to do is get this in real world scale, and you can do that in multiple ways and in multiple softwares. I just noticed there's an interesting little bow in the base, so I'm going to try to fix that. Okay. So to get this guy scaled to real world scale within Zbrush, what I like to do, Zbrush doesn't like you working in real world scale. It likes you to work in its scale, which is tiny scale. So it's always a little bit tricky, but now that we've got it decimated, we're good to scale to whatever we need. And what I like to do is I have created a 6-inch cube that I use for scale in another software that I bring into ZBrush and then scale to. And I have actually provided the link in the description to that 6-inch cube that you can download. There's also a 2mm cube that I like to use for wall thickness. When we do our shells and things, make sure that the thickness of your shell is at least 2mm. I think that's beneficial for for the structure of your model. So what I'm going to do is just bring in, I'm going to append just any shape here, and then click over to that subtool, and I'm going to import in my scale cube. So I have that set right here, and for you can just download that and then import that, and then you'll notice what it does is look how tiny our character is in comparison to this 6-inch cube. So this is real world 6 inches. I apologize for all you metric people. You're gonna have to do the conversions in your brain. But what I'm gonna do now is I'll say, okay, well, I kind of want this guy to be, maybe 6 inches or probably 4 inches or so. And so I'm just using the transform gizmo now to scale this character to roughly where I want. And you could add little ticks in here that are indicators of an inch, so you know exactly where you're at. But for me, I'm just gonna eyeball this. He's probably going to be about 4 3/4 or so tall, which is good for me, about 5 inches tall. And then I'm just going to hit save for now. Whoops, let's version up because we've done a lot of adjusting here. So let's version up our file. Okay, so I think we've got this character ready to go. So let's. From here, we've got them decimated, we've got them 500,000 faces, we've got them scaled to roughly 4.5 inches or so. And I mean, if you really want to be precise, you're going to have to just figure out, like, okay, each one of these squares here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is an inch, and then just scale accordingly. So if you wanted to see that, I guess you could just turn off solo mode, come over here, scoot this guy up, turn off symmetry, scoot this guy to the side, and then you can check out your poly frame. So yeah, he's probably, let's drop him down. No, that's all right. Okay. Yep. So about 4.5, or just above that. So if you need to be precise, I mean, you can be as precise as you need to. But for me, I think that's good. And that's basically it. So what I'm gonna do is from here, I'm just gonna delete this cube. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to hit save, and then this is ready to go off to your slicing software for supports and slicing, and I would love to see some results. I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to print him right away, but I'm going to do this at some point, just get him sent over and then painted. But I don't know if I'm going to do a video on that process. I just kind of wanted to do a quick video series that was something that was, digestible, that wasn't 18 videos long, that you all could just jump into and learn ZBrush and make something cool. And let me know if you like these videos. If I'm moving too fast, I'm sure I'm talking too fast. I could probably slow down a little bit and be a little more detailed in my explanations and things. But anyway, yeah, so thanks for joining me. Please go and check out my social media. I'm on Instagram under the same name, under Kick Punched. You can check me out there, or on Facebook, or pretty much any of the socials. I also have a website where I sell these digital 3D printable files that you can check out. I'll put a link in the description. And I hope you guys have a happy holiday season, and I'll see you in the next video.